My parents and brother refused to take my 15-year-old daughter to the ER after she broke her leg. They said, "We don't have time." Then they made her walk for 3 hours. I didn't shout. I did this. 4 days later, they were screaming in panic. It was just a Tuesday. A plain, boring, paper-stacked Tuesday. The kind where you forget what time it is because you've been staring at the same piece of paperwork for too long. My office smelled like a mix of reheated coffee and old carpet, the kind of scent that just lingers in your clothes and somehow your soul too. I was halfway through chewing a pen that had long run out of ink when my phone lit up FaceTime from Sophie. I smiled instinctively. Probably a vacation update. Maybe she was going to show me a bracelet she haggled for or some weird snack I'd never heard of. This whole trip had been her idea tag, along with my parents, my brother Mark, and her cousins for a little spring break adventure out of state. I couldn't go. My husband couldn't either. Work life, and in my case, the fact that I haven't flown in over a decade. Not because of preference, full blown phobia. Sweaty palms racing, heart borderline panic attack just getting near an airport. Even the smell of jet fuel makes my chest tighten, so we don't fly. We drive. We take the train. We stay grounded. That's how I operate. So when I answered that call, trauma was the last thing on my mind. There was no cheerful hi, Mom. No touristy background noise. Just Sophie sitting stiffly on a hotel bed, her face pale and tired, her voice barely above a whisper. "Hey, Mom, can I tell you something without you freaking out?" Spoiler, I freaked out. Quietly, internally, full system override. "What's wrong?" I was already standing. She flipped the camera. Her leg was elevated on a hotel pillow. It was red, swollen purple, not bruised, bloated. Her skin stretched unnaturally tight across her ankle and shin. "I think I broke it," she said. For a second, my brain just refused to process it. "What do you mean you think you broke it?" "I fell yesterday on the stairs at that old palace thing." "Yesterday?" I sat down, like gravity just decided to double down on me. "Okay, who's seen it?" "Grandma, Grandpa, Uncle Mark." "And they said it wasn't that bad. It didn't look swollen at first. They thought it was just a bruise." I blinked. "So, they didn't take you anywhere?" "No, we kept going. I walked it off." My eyes closed. I took a deep breath. "How long did you walk?" 3 hours, maybe a little more." 3 hours. She nodded. "They said I was being dramatic, that I'd feel better once we finished the tour." Her tone was so casual, so matter-of-fact, it made my stomach turn. "And now, it hurts worse, a lot worse." "Where are they now?" "They went out, left me to rest at the hotel." My hands froze. "You're alone?" She nodded. "Yeah, in another state." I stared at her through the screen, fighting the urge to scream or cry or both. "I'm coming to you." "You don't have to." "I do. But you'd have to fly." "I'm aware." She looked at me like she didn't believe I meant it. "You haven't flown since." "I know." I was already pulling my laptop closer. "I'm looking up flights." This time she didn't argue. Her voice went quiet. Okay." I booked the first available flight. It left in 90 minutes. No time for fear. No time to second guess. Then I called my parents. Voicemail. Tried again. Still voicemail. I called Mark. He answered, "Hey, how's it going?" "You left Sophie alone in a hotel room with a possibly broken leg." He paused. "She said she was fine. She can't walk. She's always been a little sensitive, you know? It's probably just a sprain. The swelling didn't even start until last night. You made her walk for 3 hours. We didn't make her. She's 15. She told you it hurt, and you left her, alone. She said she wanted to rest. Because she couldn't move, Mark." He sighed. "You're blowing this way out of proportion." There it was again. Always me. Always the overreactor. I hung up without another word. Grabbed my bag, slammed my laptop shut, walked straight to my boss's office. "I have to go," I said. "What kind of emergency?" "The kind where I leave right now." He looked confused, started to argue. I didn't wait. Booked a cab from the elevator. Texted Sophie, "I'm coming. Don't take anything. Stay in bed." She replied with a single red heart emoji. I stared at that tiny heart the entire ride to the airport like it was my anchor. I ran through check-in, through security, fighting the irrational need to turn back. But I didn't. I ran like I was being chased. Maybe I was. By every time someone called me too sensitive, by every time I doubted my gut. I made it to the gate just in time. No bags, no backup plan. Just me and the choice to not let anyone dismiss my daughter again. I hate flying. I really, really hate flying. But I hated what they did to her more. So I boarded that plane. And I didn't shout. Not yet. But 4 days later, they'd be the ones screaming. The woman next to me on the flight was asleep, head resting on the window, a half-crushed bag of pretzels balanced on her chest. I envied her. I hadn't unclenched my jaw since we took off. My palms were slick, my knees locked in place. Every minor bump made my heart jump into my throat. But I didn't say a word. I sat upright, frozen, as if I were taking some kind of test. Not from the turbulence, not from the flight, from myself. From every voice in my head, whispering that I was overreacting, that I was making a big deal out of nothing. That voice, by the way, sounds exactly like my mother's. It had been over 10 years since I'd flown. Not because I didn't want to, but because I genuinely couldn't. Something about airports, about that tight airless cabin and the rush of liftoff, my brain just flipped. I'd tried therapy. I'd tried breathing techniques. I even once tried medication. Still nothing worked. Still. My last flight had ended with me crying in a bathroom stall, soaked in cold sweat, sure I was going to pass out. And I remember Mark filming me during turbulence on a trip when I was 10, me clinging to the tray table, sobbing uncontrollably. He added sound effects to it later and played it at Thanksgiving like a comedy reel. Everyone laughed. And I just sat there, red-faced and humiliated. I was still a child. "You really need to grow out of this," my mom said later, rolling her eyes. But I didn't grow out of it. I just started avoiding situations where people could see me panic. Mark knew all of this. He's 3 years older than me, the golden child. Loud, athletic, always the center of attention. The kind of guy who dominates a room without ever wondering if he should. Me, I was the quiet one. The allergic to everything one. The one who got dizzy on hikes and passed out from heat exhaustion. The one who always heard, "You're just trying to get attention." Everything I did was interpreted as manipulation. If I cried, I was being dramatic. If I got scared, I was embarrassing. If I asked to stay back, I was selfish. They branded me a drama queen before I could even spell it. Meanwhile, if Mark so much as scraped his elbow, he was carried home like a war hero. The rules were always different for him, still are. So I'd stopped reacting, I learned to watch instead, I studied patterns, and eventually I got out. I studied law, I became a criminal investigator. People were surprised. Isn't that kind of intense for someone like you? Meaning, aren't you too delicate? No, I'm not delicate. I just know what it feels like not to be believed. So I built a career on evidence, facts, truth that doesn't need permission. I thought maybe, just maybe, that would change how my family saw me, that maybe they'd finally respect me, but they didn't. Even now, they still see me as one emotional breath away from meltdown. And then Sophie was born. She was perfect, quiet, gentle, kind. She had this little line between her brows like she was already trying to figure out how to fix the world with empathy. From day one, she was just like me, and I swore I'd protect her. So when my dad joked, "Looks like we've got Drama Queen 2.0, I shut it down fast. When Mark's daughter Haley got praised for being feisty and Sophie got told she was too emotional, I said, nope. Not in this house. Not while I'm in the room. But kids notice the silence more than the noise. They feel what isn't said. They absorb it. So when Sophie asked if she could go on this trip with my parents, Mark, Haley, and Ben, I hesitated. Not because I didn't trust her, because I didn't trust them. But she begged. Said she really wanted to bond with her cousins. Said she'd call every night. And my mom. Don't worry, we'll take care of her. Mark added, we'll keep an eye on her. Then they asked me to chip in for Haley and Ben's extra plane tickets since they'd be helping with Sophie. It was framed like a favor, like I should be grateful. I sent the money. I packed Sophie's suitcase myself, her allergy meds, her backup charger, her favorite snacks, her journal. I kissed her goodbye in the driveway and waved like I was fine. I had a feeling in my gut, but I ignored it. Because I wanted to believe they'd changed, that they'd finally grown, that they'd see Sophie for who she was. Not a mirror of me, not the daughter they never understood, but her own person. The plane jolted slightly. The woman next to me snored right through it. I clenched the armrest so hard I could feel my fingernails pressing into my palm. I couldn't stop thinking about Sophie on that hotel bed. Her voice quiet, saying her leg just really hurts now. That she fell yesterday. That she was forced to walk 3 hours. That they told her she was fine. That she didn't want to ruin the trip. That line gutted me. I didn't want to ruin the trip. She learned that from me. Not because I taught it, but because I lived it. I spent my entire childhood pretending to be fine, just to keep the peace. Just to make things easier for people who didn't really care either way. I broke the cycle in every way I could except the one that mattered most. I let her go with them. I trusted them to care. And they didn't. The seatbelt light dinged. We started descending. My stomach dropped with the plane. I leaned back and tried to breathe, not deep, not steady, just enough. They think I'm being dramatic, that I'm going to show up and make a scene. They're wrong. I'm not making a scene. I'm drawing a line. I didn't fly for a decade, not because I couldn't handle the sky, but because I couldn't stomach what it brought out in them. But for Sophie, I'd land in hell if I had to. By the time I reached the hotel, I could barely remember how to breathe. Everything felt too loud and too quiet at the same time, like I was trapped inside my own pulse. I don't even know what I expected when I knocked on that door. Maybe a bit of chaos. Maybe my mom fussing my dad, pretending to care, Mark doing that thing where he shrugs and says, well, kids bounce back. I don't know. What I didn't expect, Sophie answering the door herself. She looked pale, still in her pajamas, hair matted on one side like she hadn't brushed it in a day. But she was upright, leaning on the door frame like it was holding her up, which it probably was. You actually came, she said softly. That broke me. Not thank you, not help me, just surprise. Like she hadn't believed I would come until I was standing in front of her. Like she thought I made promises I don't keep. I wrapped my arms around her as gently as I could. Of course I came, I said, holding back tears. You're the only person on this planet who could get me on a plane. And don't you dare make me do it again. She let out a soft laugh and then winced and pulled away. Okay, I said, brushing her hair back from her forehead. Time to get that leg looked at before it starts glowing or talking to us. It took 15 minutes just to get her shoes on. Half of that was us arguing about whether she even needed both. She didn't. One stayed off. Her foot looked like it had swallowed a baseball. Every time I touched it, she flinched but didn't complain. While I was tying the laces, I asked, half distracted. So, how exactly did it happen? The stairs, right? I expected something sheepish, like I tripped or it was slippery. But she got quiet. It wasn't really a fall, she said. I stopped. What do you mean? Ben pushed me. I looked up. As a joke, she added quickly as if that made it better. I was taking a picture and he shoved me like he always does. I missed a step. I didn't say anything. And then I was on the ground. They saw it, I asked. She nodded. All of them. Grandma, Grandpa, Uncle Mark. My heart dropped like it had been unplugged. They saw it. I repeated. Yeah, Grandma said I was being dramatic. Mark told me to stop crying because I was scaring the tourists. Grandpa asked if I'd twisted it before the trip. I swallowed hard. You didn't tell me that on the call. She hesitated. I thought it'd go away. I didn't want to make a thing out of it. I didn't want Ben to get in trouble. I stood up. Sophie, if someone pushes you down a flight of stairs and your leg swells like that, you don't protect them. Not even if they're family. She looked away. Especially if they're family, I added firmer this time. At the hospital, they took us back pretty quickly. I'm sure part of that was me telling the front desk my daughter might have a broken leg, and part of it might have been the look I gave the clipboard like it owed me money. The nurse came in and started asking the usual questions: pain level, allergies, symptoms. Then she got to, how did it happen? Sophie glanced at me once. Then she straightened. My cousin pushed me as a joke. I fell down some stairs. She didn't say it like she was begging for sympathy. She said it like a fact, a line in a report. I watched the nurse's face, no reaction, but her pen started moving faster. 20 minutes later, we had the x-ray results. Fracture, tibia, non-displaced, but definitely broken. You're lucky it didn't shift, the doctor said. If she'd walked on it much more. He didn't finish the sentence. But I did, in my head, with a dozen worst-case scenarios, with guilt and fury swirling under my skin like a second pulse. After he left, I turned to Sophie. Tell me everything, full timeline. So she did. She told me that right after the fall, she begged to go to the hospital. They said there was no time. It was a walking tour day, and the tickets were non-refundable. They told her to ice it that night. She walked on that leg for 3 hours. When she brought it up again the next morning, they told her if it really hurts, just stay at the hotel. Because they had a winery tour planned, someone had to watch the kids, so they all left. Even Ben, even my parents. Did they say anything else, I asked? She paused. They told me I was acting like you. I blinked. Like me. Yeah, like you used to be. Drama queen, afraid of everything. My jaw clenched so hard I felt something click in the back of it. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't just about negligence. This was a pattern, a family tradition. This was them trying to erase her voice the way they tried to erase mine. Except this time, I was here, and I wasn't going to let them. I stepped out into the hallway and dialed my parents. My dad picked up. Is she okay? He asked. Not because he cared, because he knew. He knew I knew. She has a fracture, I said. A doctor confirmed it. Well, it didn't look that bad at the time. Ben pushed her. A pause. That's not really fair. He was just playing around. You all saw it happen. She tripped. No, you saw him push her, and you walked away. He didn't answer. I'm pressing charges. And that got a reaction. Erica, come on. You're going to drag the whole family into court over this. Yes. For a little accident. No, for neglect, for endangering my child. You're being irrational? No, I'm being a mother. Then I hung up. Back in the room, Sophie looked up at me. Was that Grandpa? Yep. What did he say? I smiled faintly. He said I was being irrational. She blinked. You right, she muttered. And that made her laugh, really laugh for the first time since I arrived. Still pale, still shaky, but alive. That's when I pulled out my phone. Opened the Notes app. Typed request legal consultation, medical neglect, possible child endangerment. Because this wasn't just about justice anymore. This was about sending a message to her that no one gets to hurt her and walk away. Not even family, especially not family. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because of adrenaline or rage or even relief. Sophie was finally safe. She was resting. She was treated. But my mind was already building timelines, flights, court filings, travel logistics, and then the voice, that old one, whispering in my head. Do you really want to take your own parents to court? Yes. Yes, I did. Not because I wanted revenge. This wasn't about getting even. This wasn't about proving a point for the kid I used to be. It was about Sophie. About the way her voice cracked when she said she didn't want to start drama, as if being shoved downstairs and limping for 3 hours on a broken leg wasn't worth mentioning. We were done letting things slide. 3 days later, the footage came in. Tourist cell phone, wide shot, sunlight, afternoon. A group at the top of a long marble staircase outside the palace. Sophie stood near the front holding up a camera smiling. Then Ben, 12 years old full of energy, came running up behind her. Shoved her elbow. It looked playful. It wasn't. She stumbled, missed a step, and tumbled out of frame. I stopped breathing. But that wasn't even the worst part. The camera pans slightly just a little to where the rest of the family is standing. My mom, my dad, Mark, not one of them moves. No one yells. No one rushes forward. No one drops a bag or takes a step. They just stand there. Like it didn't happen. Like she didn't happen. I forwarded the video to my lawyer. She didn't text back words, just a thumbs up emoji and a message, we've got them. Filing the case meant facing all the things I had avoided for a decade. Flights, testimonies, paperwork. Sitting across from people who had taught me not to trust my own pain. But this time I wasn't scared. I was ready. The first return flight I barely remember booking. I just remember Sophie standing in our kitchen watching me pack a small bag. You're flying again, she asked. I nodded. Looks like it. Willingly? Not willingly. But I'm not frozen anymore either. Turns out when you do the thing you swore you couldn't do and survive it, rewires you. Something inside you changes. She blinked. So, like therapy. I smiled, more like revenge. Apparently maternal rage is stronger than fear of crashing. Back home, the shouting started. First up, Mark. He showed up on my porch like it was still 2003, and he was still the center of the universe. You're really doing this, he barked. I didn't even flinch. Yes, you're going to destroy us. You should have thought of that before you left a child in a hotel room with a fractured leg. Then came my parents. Together, of course. That's how you know they were coordinating. My mom tried the guilt trip first. We're your parents, Erica. You can't take us to court. What will people say? My dad tried the practical angle. And drop it now and we can all move on. I looked at them both. You made my daughter walk on a broken leg for 3 hours. You watched her fall. You laughed at her pain. I'm not dropping anything. They left in a huff. But they weren't done. The phone calls started after that, one after another. Aunt Janine, Cousin Rachel, even Uncle Marty, who hadn't called me since 2006. Your mom's a wreck. Mark could lose his job. Can't you just let it go? Don't do this to the family. So I told them, every single one of them. The truth. The video, the x-rays, the quotes, the silence. By the fourth call, the tide started to shift. I had no idea. Wait, she was really hurt. They left her alone. Eventually, the call stopped. Then came the courtroom. No drama, no Law and Order music, no gasps or tears. Just a tired judge, a quiet courtroom, and a pile of paperwork. But the ruling, crystal clear. Child endangerment, medical neglect, failure to report injury, all three. My parents, Mark, official entries on record. No jail time, but the fines were big. The kind that don't just dent your wallet, they rearrange your whole life. And then came the part that hit Mark the hardest. He lost his job. Apparently, the school board didn't want a PE teacher with a child endangerment conviction on file. 6 weeks later, he and his family moved out of their house. Smaller place, bad part of town. Mom called it temporary. A cousin told me they were begging for rent money within a month. They didn't ask me. They knew better. I had shut the valve. No more transfers. No more birthday cards with cash. No more. Can you help with groceries this month? No more guilt-covered handouts. They were on their own. And I was done. Sophie got quieter after it all ended. Not in a shutdown way. Not like she was afraid. More like she didn't need to explain herself anymore. There was a strength in that silence. A certainty. One night while we were folding laundry, she said something that stayed with me. I think I would have just let it go. I looked at her. I know I said, but I'm glad you didn't. She nodded slowly. You shouldn't have to scream to be taken seriously. And she was right. You shouldn't. Later that night, right before bed, she showed me a message from Ben. It read, "Hey, I know this is late, but I'm really sorry. I shouldn't have pushed you, even as a joke. I was trying to be funny. It was stupid. I feel awful. I hope your leg's healing okay." She didn't cry. Didn't smile either. She just stared at it. You believe him, I asked? She shrugged. Yeah, I think so. I don't think anyone made him send it. And I believed her. Because Sophie's leg, it healed. No lasting damage, no permanent injury. Just a memory and a very clear line. A line no one will ever be allowed to cross again. I don't talk to my family anymore. No dramatic farewell, no shouting match, no Facebook posts or group chat exits. I just stopped. Stopped replying, stopped explaining, stopped hoping. They don't get to be part of my life anymore, not after what they did, and certainly not after how they justified it. There was no apology, no accountability, just silence and thinly veiled attempts to guilt me back into submission. I didn't block them, didn't even delete their numbers. I just chose silence. And for the first time in my life, that silence felt like peace. People always say family is forever. That blood's thicker than water. That you're supposed to forgive, forget, move on for the sake of the family. But no one talks about the cost of that silence. No one talks about what it does to a person to keep swallowing pain so the people who caused it can keep sitting comfortably at the table. I used to think if I worked hard enough, proved myself enough, became successful enough, they'd change. They didn't. So I did. Sophie and I took a short trip after the case wrapped up. Just the two of us. Somewhere quiet, not too far. She chose the destination, I booked the flights. It wasn't extravagant. But it mattered, because it was the first time I flew without needing to be chased by emergency. Without panic gripping my spine. I still hated it. My palms still sweated. My stomach still flipped. But I boarded. I sat. I breathed. And I landed. And every time I do it now, I think back to that very first moment, her voice on the phone saying, "You really came." Yeah, I really did. And I always will. Because here's the thing, this whole story. It's not just about one injury. It's not just about a broken leg, or a terrible trip, or a selfish brother who never grew up. It's about being believed. It's about being taken seriously. About protecting the parts of your child that no one protected in you. There's a lot I can live with. But watching her doubt her own pain, watching her make herself small so the adults around her don't get uncomfortable, watching her mirror the exact survival tactics I used growing up. No, that ends here. It ends with me. I get a lot of comments now on social media and passing conversations, even from colleagues. Some are supportive. Others, not so much. You really took it too far. Couldn't you have just talked it out? It's not like they did it on purpose. But that's the point, isn't it? It's never on purpose. Not in families like mine. It's always a joke, a misunderstanding, an accident. It's always you being too sensitive. You making it into something it's not. You overreacting. Until someone ends up in a hospital. Until someone ends up with trauma they can't name. Until someone breaks the cycle. And suddenly you're ruining the family. Here's what I've learned. The people who hurt you the most will always call you cruel when you stop allowing it. They'll say you've changed. And you have. You've changed the rules. For yourself, for your child, for the future. They don't get to decide what justice looks like anymore. They had their chance. They failed. Sophie's stronger now, not just physically, but emotionally. She speaks up faster. She questions things more. She knows what her voice sounds like when she uses it, and that's something no apology from my family could have ever given her. She's in therapy now, not because she's broken, but because we believe in healing, while it's still a bruise, not a scar. She likes it. Says it's like unlearning a language she never meant to speak. Sometimes I catch her writing in her journal with that same little crease between her brows, trying to figure out how to make sense of a world that rarely makes sense back. I see myself in her, but I also see someone braver. Someone who knows she's allowed to say this hurt me without needing anyone else to agree. That's the victory. Not the court ruling, not the fine, not even the job loss. The real win is that she knows the difference now. Between love and control. Between protection and silence. Between family and people who act like it. A few weeks ago, she asked me something that caught me off guard. Do you think they'll ever say sorry? I didn't have an answer. Maybe, maybe not. But I told her the truth. I'm not waiting for that, and neither should you. She nodded slowly like she already knew. And then she said something I'll never forget. I'm just glad I didn't imagine it, that you saw it too. That hit hard. Because I remember what it felt like growing up in a house where your pain was treated like performance, where no one believed you unless you were bleeding on the floor, where every hurt had to be justified with witnesses and evidence, or it didn't count. And now she knows better because I believed her the first time and I showed up. And that changes everything. There are still days I feel the weight of it all. Days I wonder if I did the right thing or if I could have handled it more gracefully, whatever that means. But then I remember her face when I walked into that hotel room. The shock, the relief, the quiet aching trust. And I know I'd do it all again. Yes, even the flying, even the court, even the silence that came after. Because you can rebuild a home from scratch. But not if you keep inviting in the people who burned it down in the first place. So, what do you think? Did I go too far? Or just far enough? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell. You know what still surprises me? It's not that they hurt her, it's that they genuinely don't think they did anything wrong. Even after the court ruling, even after the footage, even after Sophie had to wear a cast for 6 weeks and go to physical therapy. Nothing. No ownership. No remorse. Just quiet avoidance and the occasional guilt-laced message from someone in the family trying to smooth things over. I got a voicemail from Aunt Janine a week after the verdict. Erica, honey, I just think maybe this whole thing got bigger than it needed to. Family makes mistakes. We forgive. That's what we do. I didn't call back. Because that's the thing about people like her. They don't want resolution. They want silence. They want you to patch things up so the dinner table isn't awkward. So no one has to say out loud what actually happened. But this isn't a sitcom. It's not a misunderstanding wrapped up with hugs in 30 minutes. This was my daughter. Alone, in pain, dismissed, forgotten. And if standing up for her makes me the villain in someone else's version of events, fine. I'll take it. I'll take every ounce of their discomfort if it means she never has to doubt her own pain again. What I didn't expect, though, was how much pushback would come from people outside my family. Coworkers, casual friends, acquaintances who heard about the story second or third hand. It's so sad, one woman said to me in line at the grocery store. But suing your own parents, that's a lot. You know what else is a lot? Watching your child limp around a hotel room because the people she trusted decided a winery tour was more important than her well-being. That's a lot. I started keeping a mental list every time someone tried to minimize what happened. Every time someone shifted the blame to Sophie, or me. She's kind of sensitive, right? Maybe it wasn't intentional. Kids roughhouse, that's what they do. No, this wasn't about a joke gone wrong. This was about what happened after. This was about the choice to ignore it, to gaslight her, to leave her, to tell her straight-faced that she was being dramatic while she walked 3 hours on a fractured leg. You don't get to wave that off as roughhousing. You don't get to hide behind good intentions when the outcome is medical neglect. And yes, I'm using that term because that's what it was. It took a while even for me to say it out loud. At first I hesitated. It felt too heavy, too official, too final. But the law agreed, the x-rays agreed, and most importantly, Sophie agreed. She looked at me one night while we were brushing our teeth and said, "Do you think they'd have treated Haley like that?" And I didn't even have to think. No, Haley, the golden cousin, Mark's daughter, the one who could throw a fit and be called passionate, who could get hurt and be carried like royalty. No, they wouldn't have let her walk in pain. They would have had her in a hospital within the hour. The difference, Haley's allowed to be loud. Sophie and I, we were raised to be quiet, to minimize, to smile through it, to keep the peace. And we're not doing that anymore. A couple weeks after everything settled, I had a conversation with Sophie's therapist. She said something that stuck with me ever since. Kids don't always need their parents to be perfect, but they do need to know someone's in their corner. That hit me right in the chest, because I didn't grow up with that. I had parents, I had a house, I had food and clothes and a bike in the garage, but I never had a corner. I had an audience. And every mistake I made was a punchline. Every fear I confessed was a weakness to be mocked. Every cry for help became another family joke. That's why I was never the funny one at Thanksgiving. I was always the material. And I swore to myself Sophie would never feel that way. I can't protect her from everything. I know that. But I can give her a corner. And I did. The legal case is closed now. The files are stored. The outcome's on public record. And the ripple effects still showing up. Mark hasn't spoken to me since the ruling. He sent one email passive-aggressively asking if I was happy now. I didn't reply. My mom texted a blurry photo of a church bulletin with a quote about forgiveness healing the soul. I muted her number. They're still trying to script the ending they wanted. The one where I apologize for causing a stir. Where I come back to the family cookout with my tail between my legs, grateful to be included again. They don't realize that door closed the moment they left Sophie in that hotel room. She's the reason I'll never go back. And I'm okay with that. I used to think that cutting off family was a kind of failure. Like I didn't try hard enough. Like if I'd just been better, they would have loved me properly. But I was never the problem. And neither is Sophie. We're not broken. We're just not what they wanted. And that's fine. Because we've got something better now. We've got truth, we've got peace, we've got each other. And we've got a new rule in this house. If someone makes you doubt your own pain, they don't get to stay in your life. No matter who they are, it's strange what people think justice looks like. Some picture a courtroom with shouting lawyers and dramatic confessions. Others imagine some grand apology tears streaming down cheeks a hug that undoes years of pain. But justice, real justice, is quieter than that. It's the moment you realize you're not waiting anymore. It's the moment you stop explaining your hurt to people determined not to understand it. It's the quiet strength that comes from doing what's right even when it turns you into the villain in someone else's story. I've had friends reach out and say, "I could never do what you did." They mean it as a compliment, but there's always that undertone like maybe I went too far. Like maybe it's noble to suffer silently for the sake of family. But silence isn't noble. Silence is just invisible pain. And I'm done with it. Sophie and I started fresh after everything. We moved not far, just enough to feel new. She started at a different school. I changed jobs. Not because we were running away, but because we needed air, space, a new rhythm. We built something different, something better. The hardest part wasn't the legal battle or the flights or even the emotional fallout. It was unlearning the instinct to explain myself, to justify why I did what I did, to walk into every room anticipating judgment, to overcompensate for being the dramatic one. You'd be surprised how long that instinct sticks with you. But slowly I started letting go. I stopped responding to guilt messages. I stopped defending my boundaries like they were up for debate. I stopped trying to make other people comfortable at the expense of my own peace. And Sophie, she flourished. She joined the school paper, started painting again, grew 2 inches in 6 months, and started asking harder questions about the world. One night we were eating takeout on the couch when she asked, "Do you think people can really change?" I took a breath. "Not unless they want to." She nodded. "So you don't think they'll ever get it?" "I think they'll rewrite the story in their heads until it makes sense to them. Like saying it was all a misunderstanding." "Exactly." She was quiet for a second. Then she said, "I don't need them to get it. I just needed you to." That landed so hard I nearly dropped my fork. Because that's the truth, isn't it? Most of the time when someone's been hurt, they're not asking for the world to agree with them. They're just asking for someone to see them, really see them, and say, "Yeah, that was wrong." That moment of recognition is powerful. It's healing. And if no one else will give it to her, I will, 1,000 times over. We've built new traditions since then. Quiet ones. Pancake Sundays, unplugged Saturdays, no forced family holidays, no table full of eggshells and smiles that don't reach your eyes. Last Christmas, we skipped the whole thing, went to a cabin with hot cocoa and bad cell reception and a fireplace that crackled like it had a grudge against the cold. Just the two of us. It was the best holiday I've ever had. No drama, no guilt, just peace. And you know what? That peace is loud. It's not passive. It's not retreat. It's resistance. It's saying you don't get to define love if your version of it comes with conditions. People still try to check in sometimes. An old coworker, a distant cousin, someone who heard the story third hand and wants both sides. But there aren't two sides when a child is in pain, and the adults around her choose tourism over treatment. There aren't two sides when a girl is crying and told to stop being dramatic. There aren't two sides when someone gets hurt and you walk away. There's only one side. And it's the side that picked her up off that hotel bed, booked a flight in less than an hour, and never looked back. Some days I still get mad. Not because of what happened, though. That still burns, but because of what could have happened. What if the fracture had shifted? What if she'd fainted in that hotel room while alone? What if no one had answered the phone? It's a spiral I try not to dwell in. But sometimes when I'm driving alone or washing dishes, it hits me all over again. The fury. The heartbreak. The disbelief that people I once loved could see pain so clearly and still turn away from it. And then I remind myself they didn't change. They just ran out of places to hide. And I stopped covering for them. That's all this really was. A refusal to stay quiet. A refusal to let their version of events become the only one. And most of all, a refusal to let Sophie grow up wondering if her voice mattered. Because it does. So does yours. If no one's ever told you that before, let me be the first. Your pain is not a performance. Your instincts are not wrong. You don't need permission to call something what it is. And if standing up for yourself means some doors slam shut, let them. Some doors are exits for a reason. You know what? I think people misunderstand most about cutting off family. They think it's about hate. But it's not. It's about harm. It's about the slow erosion of trust over time. It's about the little betrayals that stack up until you don't recognize the people in the photos anymore. It's about learning that just because someone raised you doesn't mean they respected you. I didn't stop talking to my parents because I wanted revenge. I stopped because I finally accepted the truth. They were never going to be different. And I was never going to be safe with them. That's what this comes down to: safety. Not comfort, not tradition, not keeping the peace, just basic emotional and physical safety. And when that's gone, you don't owe anyone an explanation for leaving. For a long time, I thought I did. I kept showing up. Holidays, birthdays, family reunions. Sitting at tables where my presence was tolerated, not welcomed. Laughing at jokes that always landed just a little too close to the bone. Letting my daughter be treated like a less exciting version of her cousins. I did it for the illusion. The illusion of family. The illusion of we're fine. The illusion that maybe this time it would be different. But illusions don't keep you warm at night. They don't come to the hospital. They don't say, "I believe you," when you're in tears. They just take. And take. And take. Until you're hollow. Sophie asked me once, "Do you miss them?" And I answered honestly, I miss who I hoped they could be, because that's the real grief. You don't just lose people, you lose the dream of them. The version of them you built in your head, the one you kept defending to everyone else. But sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is mourn that version and walk away from the real one. That kind of grief is quieter than death, but it lasts longer. It sits in the everyday things. The smell of a certain dish, a photo buried in a drawer, a phrase someone uses that you hadn't heard since you were a kid. But here's what else grief does: it frees you. It creates room for something new. And Sophie and I, we filled that space with better things. Game nights, crying, laughing fits over burnt cookies, arguments about what qualifies as a real movie, unscheduled dance breaks in the living room, and safety. So much safety. We built that together, and I don't say this to pretend we're perfect. We're not. There are days I mess up, days she shuts down, days when we're tired or cranky or just trying to get through the week like everybody else. But the difference is we show up. We don't leave each other in hotel rooms. We don't ignore pain. We don't say you're being dramatic when the other person's voice shakes. And that's everything. Recently, someone asked if I'd ever consider reconnecting with my family. I said no. They looked surprised. Like I was supposed to have softened by now. Like time alone should have healed it all. But time doesn't heal what you refuse to acknowledge. And they still don't acknowledge anything. Not the injury, not the dismissal, not the fact that a little girl was left behind while the people who were supposed to protect her went wine tasting. They've moved on, posted vacation pictures, bought new clothes, shared inspirational quotes about grace and forgiveness like they didn't leave a child behind. But moving on isn't healing. It's avoidance in a prettier outfit. And I refuse to pretend we're fine just because everyone else is tired of the story. Because Sophie lives with that story, and so do I. And if that makes us difficult, if that makes us inconvenient, if that makes us drama queens, then so be it. I'd rather be difficult than disappear. I'd rather be inconvenient than complicit. And if the price of peace is silence, then I choose noise every time. Sometimes I wonder what Sophie will remember most when she's older. Will it be the hospital room, the brace, the silence from the people she once called family? Or will it be the plane? The flight I took after 10 years of saying I couldn't. The look on my face when I opened that hotel door. The way I held her like the world had stopped turning just to make room for her pain. I hope it's that. I hope she remembers I came. Because that moment, it rewrote everything. Not just for her. For me. It showed me that I wasn't weak. That fear didn't own me. That the narrative my family wrote for me, overly sensitive, too much fragile, wasn't true. I was brave. I am brave. Because bravery isn't loud. It's not showy. It's not some big cinematic moment with swelling music. Sometimes bravery is just booking a flight with shaking hands, showing up with no plan except I believe you, drawing a line in the sand and saying never again. That's what I did. That's what we did. And if nothing else, I hope Sophie remembers that. Because life will knock her down again. It's inevitable. People will question her worth, her words, her instincts. They'll try to make her small so they can feel bigger. But she'll have this memory. The day she was hurt, the day they didn't listen, and the day her mother did. You know, the question I get asked the most, usually in hushed tones, like they're not sure they're allowed to say it out loud. Do you ever regret it? And I always answer it the same way. No, not for a second. Because once you've tasted what it feels like to be heard, to be believed, you can't go back to being invisible. You can't unknow that kind of validation. You can't pretend the silence didn't hurt just because it's quieter than confrontation. There's a kind of grief that comes with being the one who breaks the pattern. You lose people. You lose holidays. You lose the group chats, the awkward birthday cards, the shared jokes only your family would get, the fantasy that maybe next time they'll treat you better. But you gain something else. Yourself, your dignity, your sanity, your sleep. I sleep now. Really sleep. No more tossing and turning, replaying things I should have said at the dinner table. No more waking up at 3 a.m. with my heart racing because I overreacted again. No more practicing apologies for things I wasn't actually sorry for. Just rest. Just peace. Just Sophie and I building something that feels like home, not just a house with walls, but a space where love doesn't come with a trap door. It's funny. The more distance I've put between us and my family, the clearer everything looks. There were so many signs. So many red flags I ignored for the sake of keeping the family together. The time they told Sophie not to cry when her fish died, because it's just a stupid pet. The time my mom joked about how Sophie was probably going to be just as dramatic as me. The time Mark took credit for a school project she spent weeks on saying, she's a smart kid, but I did help her with the outline. He didn't. They weren't just dismissive. They were erasers, constantly trying to sand her down into something easier to manage. Quieter, smaller, more acceptable. That's what abusers do, not always with fists, sometimes with words, with silence, with smirks and eye rolls and strategic absences, with jokes that aren't funny, with concern that's actually control. I see it now, and I teach her to see it too. We've had conversations I never thought I'd have with a teenager. About boundaries, about gaslighting, about emotional manipulation, about how even people who love you can still hurt you, especially when they refuse to admit what they've done. And she listens. She really listens. Sometimes I catch her repeating my words back to her friends when she thinks I'm not paying attention. It's okay to walk away. You're allowed to say no. Love isn't supposed to hurt. And I think maybe this is the cycle breaking. Not with shouting, not with courtroom verdicts, but with quiet wisdom passed down like armor. She's not just healing, she's evolving. And I get to witness that. A few days ago, we were walking through the park, just one of those lazy Sunday strolls where the world feels a little softer, and she turned to me and said, I think I finally forgive Ben. I looked at her curious. Really? She nodded. Yeah, not because he deserves it, but because I don't want to carry it around anymore. I smiled. Forgiveness isn't a gift you give someone else, I told her. It's something you give yourself. You get to let go. They don't get to come back. And that's where we are now. Forgiven, but not forgotten. Free, but not naive. We don't live in the past. We just remember it clearly enough not to repeat it. Sophie's leg is fine now, stronger than ever. She even joined the dance club at school, something she was too scared to try before. She said, I want to do something with the part of me that healed. I love that. I love her, and I love the version of myself I've become since all of this happened. Because the old me, she would have let it slide. She would have internalized the pain, told herself she was being too emotional. Maybe cried quietly in the car and then smiled through the next family photo. But not anymore. Now I speak. Now I show up. Now I fight when it matters. And not with fists or fury, with presence, with conviction, with refusal. I refuse to raise a daughter who doubts her own reality. I refuse to be the woman who tells her kid to just suck it up because that's what was told to me. I refuse to make excuses for people who only show up when they need something. I refuse to dilute my voice just to make space for other people's comfort. There's one more part of the story I haven't shared yet. A letter from my mother. It arrived weeks after the court decision. No return address, just my name written in a handwriting I hadn't seen in months. I almost didn't open it, but I did. It was 2 pages. Neatly written, formal, like a business transaction dressed up in maternal guilt. She didn't apologize, not really. She said she regretted how things turned out. That family should stick together. That sometimes we don't realize we've hurt people until it's too late. And then at the end, I hope someday you'll understand that we were doing our best. I read that sentence 3 times. Then I folded the letter back up, slid it into the envelope, and placed it in the drawer with the court papers. Because doing your best means doing better when someone tells you they're hurting. And they never did. Sophie doesn't know about the letter. Maybe someday I'll tell her. Maybe not. Right now, she's in the kitchen singing to herself while making hot chocolate. She's offbeat, off key, and completely wildly free. And that's all the closure I'll ever need. So here we are. The end of the story, or maybe just the start of something better. People like tidy conclusions. They want the bad guys punished, the good guys rewarded, and everyone walking off into the sunset hand in hand. But real life, it's messier than that. Real life doesn't tie itself up with a bow. There's no neat resolution when the people who hurt you still don't believe they did anything wrong. No final scene where they show up teary-eyed confessing everything. No dramatic reunion or last-minute change of heart. And honestly, that's okay, because the goal was never to fix them. The goal was to protect her. And I did. I look at Sophie now, bright-eyed, sarcastic, a little stubborn, but so solid in herself, and I know I did the right thing. I know I'd do it again, even if it meant flying across the country every single week, even if it meant taking heat from every family member, coworker, and internet stranger with an opinion. Because at the end of the day, my job is not to be liked. It's to be there, to show up when no one else will, to fight when the world tells her to shrink, to believe her when everyone else says she's overreacting. That's what being a mother means. Not sacrificing yourself endlessly, not staying silent for the sake of the group chat, but choosing your child's well-being over everyone's comfort, including your own. People keep asking me what I'm going to do next. The case is over. The fallout is done. The silence from my family is permanent. So what's next? The truth is life. Life is what's next, our life, and we're building it on our terms. We've made new friends. Sophie joined a book club and has a crush on someone who actually listens when she talks. I started hosting a monthly dinner night with coworkers, people who actually ask how we're doing and wait for the answer. There's laughter in our house again. The real kind, the belly kind, not the nervous laughter you use to diffuse tension. There's music playing on weekend mornings. Not out of obligation, not to fill space, but because we like how it sounds. Because it feels like joy. Sophie has plans now, college, travel, advocacy work maybe. She says she wants to help people who've been dismissed, ignored, written off. I wonder where she got that from. Every now and then she asks me what I'd say if we ever bumped into them again. My parents mark the rest of the family. And I tell her the truth. I'd say nothing. Because some people don't deserve access to your peace once you've finally earned it. Some people don't deserve your words, your presence, your explanation. They had all those things. They wasted them. And I'm not in the business of giving second chances to people who never took the first one seriously. That might sound harsh, but it's not bitterness, it's boundaries. And boundaries are love with a backbone. They're the difference between surviving and thriving. That's what we're doing now. We're not just surviving. We're living, thriving, rooted in truth, not afraid of being too much, not shrinking to fit someone else's version of who we should be. Sophie keeps a photo on her nightstand. It's not of the whole family. It's not of a vacation or a celebration. It's a selfie, taken the day after we got back from the hospital. Her leg in a cast. Me beside her, eyes swollen from crying, both of us smiling. Real smiles. Tired, raw, unfiltered. We printed it because she said this is the first time I felt safe again. That photo is our story. Not the pain, the response to it. Not the betrayal. The healing that came after. And if anyone ever asks, was it worth it? I'll just point to that photo. Because I didn't fly across the country for revenge. I didn't file the lawsuit to ruin anyone's life. I did it so she'd never have to question her own reality again. So she'd never sit in a room full of people who claim to love her and feel completely alone. So she'd know what love is supposed to look like, showing up, speaking up, standing firm. And if I had to do it all again, I'd still board that plane, still show up at that hotel, still say we're going to the hospital. Now, still draw that line in the sand and say no more. Because she's watching. And one day when the world tries to quiet her down, she'll remember her mother didn't just say she believed her, she acted like it. And that's the legacy I care about. So no, I don't regret it. Not the noise, not the mess, not the silence that followed. Because in that silence, I finally heard the one voice that really mattered. Mine.